My family had to learn the hard way that not everyone needs help in this world. Just because it's Thanksgiving doesn't mean all the crazy people in the world take a day off. For a little context, I was a young boy who was 10 at the time, and my brother was 4. We were the only children, and being young, we never got to have a say if we were comfortable with who would come over for the holidays. That being said, my mom thought it would be a good idea to invite her coworker whom she just met 3 days before Thanksgiving to our house to have dinner with us. My dad was unhappy about it since the woman just started working at my mom's job, and we didn't know anything about her. My mom wanted to be nice to the lady because she had no one to spend Thanksgiving with and was all alone since her kids got taken from her by child services. My mom said she and her coworker got close really fast and told each other deep personal things, so she knew she could trust her. When the day came, I was nervous because I was a shy kid and didn't like meeting new people. She seemed nice though. She brought gifts for us for Christmas, and she even brought dessert. My dad was rude to her the entire dinner and was asking her millions of questions. She responded to every one of them, and my mom would thank her for being so kind. That was until my dad asked the wrong question. He asked her why she wasn't with her kids and what did she do to get them taken from her. And within an instant, she went from happy to insane. The woman started screaming curse words at my dad nonstop and got up in his face. My dad screamed back for her to leave the house and tried to forcefully kick her out. My mom told my brother and me to leave, but that wasn't until she stabbed my dad's hand with a fork. My mom took my brother and me to hide in the attic, and all I could hear was my dad yelling at her to get out of the house. He told my mom to call the police, and she did. Then the yelling stopped, and it was quiet. We heard footsteps coming up to the attic, and my brother thought it was my dad and went to the door to only see that it was the woman with a knife. She grabbed my brother and tried to make a run for it. My mom tackled her, and they both fell down the attic ladder along with her holding my brother. My mother and the woman were unconscious. I ran to my brother, and we both ran out of the house. As soon as we could catch our breath, the lady came after us and tried kidnapping me and my brother. I kicked and screamed as loud as I could while she picked both of us up and ran towards her car. Luckily, we got the attention of neighbors, and they came out trying to help us. The police arrived at the same time, and they arrested her, and she went to jail. My mom and dad were okay, but they had to spend days in the hospital. We later found out that her kids weren't taken from her. They chose to be away from her because she was a lunatic. Her 2 sons were the same age as me and my brother, so that's why she befriended my mom. Since then, we've never invited anyone to our Thanksgiving dinner.
I still find it hard to help homeless people to this very day. Of course, I will give money to whoever needs it or give food and water. But it gives me anxiety to do that. My husband and I never had kids. I lost my parents at an early age, and with my husband's parents living in a different country, we only have each other for Thanksgiving and Christmas. We love it, but it is a little sad being alone when you're supposed to be around family and loved ones for these year-end holidays. I was always raised to give back to people in need, and with us being desperate to spend Thanksgiving with anyone, we didn't think having a homeless couple over would be a bad or dangerous idea. In fact, I felt happy knowing a husband and wife just like my husband, and I would be able to give someone company and warm good food. I was caught up on work a few days before Thanksgiving, so I didn't get the chance to go shopping for dinner until the day of. Everything was pretty much gone, and I could only get a few items, but it was enough for my husband and me. When I left the grocery store, a homeless couple asked me for food, and me never saying no to anyone in need, I offered them to come back to my place to eat and have somewhere to sleep for the night. My husband didn't fully like the idea, but did it for me because he knew how I was. The couple brought wine with the money they saved up and even helped with preparing the food. The night was fun, and I thought I made some new friends. They told us what happened to them, and we offered to help them for as long as they needed help. My husband started feeling unwell and went to lie down on the couch in the living room while I stayed at the table conversing with them. I wasn't getting suspicious of them until they began asking about the house and my parents' names along with what was in our bank accounts. I told them to stop asking those questions, and I didn't know them all that well to give out those answers. They continued to ask personal questions, and I politely asked them to leave. They agreed, but when I got up to open the door, I dropped on the floor and the room started spinning. I shouted for my husband, but he was out cold on the couch. I crawled over to him and shook him to wake up, but he wouldn't, and the couple followed me while laughing. They said the wine and food were poisoned and we only had a few hours left before we died. I passed out for a while, and by the time I came to, I was tied up and my husband was awake with blood dripping from him. They cut up the side of his face, and that's when I realized that they were serious and wanted to harm us more than just poison. Both of them raided the place and took all of our personal items that would be enough to take our identities and left. My husband was able to get out of the ropes that we were tied to and called 911. By the time the cops showed, the couple was long gone. I know not every homeless person is like this, but it's hard to know who really wants help or who will do anything to get more than help. They've never been found again, and we were able to close every account they had, but it still worries me that one day they could find us again once they figure out they didn't finish the job.
If this story doesn't show you that just because you've known somebody for your entire life doesn't mean they don't have skeletons in their closet, figuratively and literally, I don't know what will. My parents have been best friends with two other parents who were like my aunt and uncle. We can call them Kelly and Mike. They had a son who we can call Trent. He was much older than us but had a learning disability, so he acted the same age as me. My mom and dad, on the other hand, had 8 kids including me. I was the youngest boy and was 12 at the time. It was always a big family occasion every year. My parents, Kelly and Mike, were poor growing up, but my dad became the CEO of a tech company, so we had a big house to fit all of us. Since it was my parents' house that we were having the dinner at, they made a deal that Kelly and Mike had to bring most of the food. Kelly cooked all the food and my mom baked desserts. Even though that sounds like a great night with lots of food to eat, it was the worst time of the year for my siblings and me. The food would be fresh and good for the first day, then once the second day came around, it smelled so bad that it would stink up the entire house. Because of that, we hated eating it on Thanksgiving Day because we knew how bad it would smell the next day. My parents forced us to eat it so we wouldn't make Kelly feel bad for making a lot of food. This year was no different, being forced to eat and then all of us puking hours later. Once it was getting late, all of the adults wanted to have quote adult time, which only meant drinking with some other friends that my parents would invite over so they could get away from us kids. Normally they would go to a bar or restaurant, but they decided to have it at our house, which meant we had to go over to Kelly and Mike's house for the night. The food smelled bad, but their house smelled even worse, and we hated going over there. My older siblings were supposed to watch us, but left and went to their friends' houses or anywhere else just so they wouldn't sleep over. It ended up being me and my 2 younger sisters who had to sleep over. My sisters went to sleep pretty quickly, so it was just Trent and I awake. Trent was around 30 years old, but like I said earlier, he acted like he was my age. He never spoke since I was born, but we always played video games or played with action figures. My older siblings didn't give him the time of day, but I loved being around him. We played video games that night. During the game, I asked him why the house smelled so bad. He dropped his controller and looked at me with a terrified look on his face and stared at me like I caught him up in a secret. I told him I was sorry and he didn't have to answer, and he picked his controller up and continued playing. I tried to take the smell, but no longer could. I stood up and asked him what is that smell, and I could make it go away for him. I guess saying I can make it go away for him worked, because for the first time ever since I was a baby, he spoke. He said, "Can you make it go away?" I nodded my head and was shocked to hear his voice. I nodded thinking it was going to be some dead rats or mold that could make that smell. He told me to follow him and I did. I began feeling nervous for some reason because I didn't know what to prepare for and knew it had to be bad to make Trent talk for the first time practically in his whole life. He took me to the basement of the house and the smell got worse as we got closer. He pointed to the wall in the basement and told me to make it go away. I didn't understand what he meant because it looked like a regular wall until he grabbed a sledgehammer and busted the wall open. Inside of it were what looked like hundreds of bones and even fresh bodies. It is still the most traumatizing thing that I've ever experienced in my life. I instantly got my sisters and got out of that house. I told Trent to follow me and I called for my oldest brother to pick us up. Once we told him what happened, he took us straight to the police station. We told them everything and they took Trent for questioning and he became a suspect. They called my parents and later Kelly and Mike were wanted suspects. They found more people in multiple walls in the basement and saw she was cooking them. My parents were told she cooked them for the food that she brought to our house and looks like she's been doing it for years. Trent was let go and went to stay with his grandparents a few states away. Kelly and Mike got locked up and we all had to go get checked at the hospital. We were told it was a miracle we didn't die or turn just like them after eating that for so many years. My parents still invite Trent over for Thanksgiving, and he still tells us new stories of what his parents did.